Alright, so company mergers or acquisitions happen all the time, and sometimes it can be for the better, but sometimes it can really just drag a brand down from the prestige that it once had or the success that it once had for the company or the customer. Now, sometimes it's not as obvious as others, but I'm going to go through a couple of them here, and let's get started. So the first one is Bass Pro buying Cabela's in 2017. So Bass Pro and Cabela's were basically two of their own kind. They were both very unique, large stores that would offer vast amounts of selection in terms of hunting and fishing gear. There basically is nowhere else like it. So when Bass Pro bought Cabela's for around $5 billion, this created a big problem, as this particular space was basically a monopoly now. Stores that were planned got canceled in certain spots, and some Cabela's stores have been closed or converted in favor of Bass Pro shops. From what I can tell, there aren't bargain caves at Cabela's stores anymore, and if you go into a Cabela's store now, there is a ton of Bass Pro branded merchandise and things for sale there. So honestly, the differentiation is becoming less and less between these two. I think Bass Pro ultimately would like to have all of the Cabela's be Bass Pros. I don't believe any new Cabela's stores have opened since this merger. So really now, in terms of this type of specific destination hunting and fishing store space, you're kind of just stuck with one option, even though it may not quite seem like it. Next we have Burger King buying Tim Hortons in 2014. Now in this case, it's more so in the US that Burger King has been ruining Tim Hortons, as the company has grown overall, but is losing badly to places like Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. In the US, the company has really maintained the same amount of locations over the last 10, 11 years or so, while Dunkin', at least in terms of price point, is their main competitor in the US, has grown by around 2,000 stores. They really just don't seem to know what they're doing with Tim Hortons in the US. They kind of overpromise and underdeliver when it comes to locations. They say they're going to put a bunch of locations in an area, and then they either don't or put very, very few. And the areas that they do want to put them in don't really make much sense because they're not even close to where existing locations are and there's brand awareness, or they're just not well strategically located. They're either too close to each other or they're far from freeway exits. You know, it's a good chain with good restaurants that is superior to Dunkin' in some ways, but Burger King just really does not know what they're doing with this concept in the US. But with Dunkin's seemingly endless and massive expansion throughout the United States, there just isn't even really much opportunity to expand now. So it'll probably just stay either a middling or even declining company in the US, despite its incredible popularity in Canada. Next we have a merger that most people know well. I've talked about it on this channel before, and that is Kmart buying Sears. This happened in 2004, just 2 years after Kmart had gone bankrupt, and just over a year from when it emerged from that bankruptcy. Instead of using the $11 billion in cash Kmart spent to make this deal happen on actually improving what they had, they went out and bought Sears, which at the time was not failing, but given that malls not too far in the future from this point were about to fail in large numbers due primarily to online shopping, Sears probably already had a bleak future to begin with, because that was their main medium of exchange, shopping malls. But given Kmart, a company that was already experiencing troubles, bought Sears and used all their cash to buy them, there really was no money left to innovate, and they pretty much just dragged Sears down with them, as they would pretty much go down together during a similar period in time, and Kmart through Sears Holdings would basically just scrap any valuable assets Sears had for cash to try to save what was left. And finally we have Golden Gate Capital buying Red Lobster from Darden Restaurants in 2014 for $2.1 billion. Golden Gate Capital, upon buying Red Lobster in 2014, would allow Darden to sell many of the properties that they owned of Red Lobster. This would mean Golden Gate would not even own the properties of more than half of the Red Lobsters that they were now operating. They then tried to get in the business of real estate, buying and selling properties that Red Lobster owned, which no doubt took focus away from the restaurant side of things. Golden Gate would then sell a large portion of Red Lobster to one of its seafood suppliers, Thai Union, who would eventually become owner in 2020. Thai Union, a restaurant food supplier, not quite understanding the restaurant business itself, would essentially run the company into the ground with poor management, endless shrimp, and menu changes. High debt would force the company to file for bankruptcy in 2024. Over 100 stores would close, and a creditor would end up buying them. While Thai Union can be blamed for putting the final nails in the coffin of Red Lobster, Golden Gate Capital was really the facilitator of the first bad deal in terms of real estate, and then the second bad deal in selling to a supplier instead of someone associated with running restaurants. Who really knows if long-term this company will even exist in the near future? And it is acquisitions and mergers like these that have at least somewhat ruined brands and companies. Thank you for watching.